Uh, Thanks everyone for hopping on today's call of strategy and policy facing track of CARC. CARC is Campus Research Computing Consortium. So I'll give a quick overview of CARC and then uh, introduce the speakers. So CARC is basically an organization for all the research computing and data professionals. It has different aspects associated with CARC. One of the big aspect is the people network, which is uh, a virtual conference, year-round virtual conference that happens with 5 different foci, including like researcher-facing, data-facing, system-facing, emerging centers, and strategy and policy-facing tracks. Then there's working groups that focuses on different aspects of RCD. We have the interest group that are budding working groups, different foci than the working group. So there's those interest groups and working groups. And then there's the support group, which is the operations group that supports the entire operations of CARC. So in the people network, as I mentioned, there's these 5 tracks. They're all virtual. So it's easy to attend any of the tracks. All you have to do is go join the mailing list and start attending these virtual events. As you get more familiar with these virtual conferences, or you can get further involved. You can hop on to one of the monthly onboarding calls that we hold. So if you have any questions, you can ask peers who will be present and will be able to guide you through the process of joining CARC and participating in CARC. You can also send an email to get started at CARC. Can get involved using in the working groups by sending an email to get involved at CARC. So fairly low bar to get started and get involved in CARC. As for the strategy and policy facing track, this is the current steering committee. Myself and Patrick are co-coordinators, and we have several other steering committee members. We are always on the lookout for new steering committee members. So if you are interested in developing agenda for this track, the strategy policy facing tracks, please contact me or Patrick, and we'll be more than happy to get you onboarded. So couple of announcements, I guess. We don't have a call in July. It's the day before the 4th of July break. So we said, let's not have a call. So there won't be any call in July. In August, as the tradition goes, every year we have PERC recap. So we'll have PERC recap for August. And for today's call, we are going to talk about leadership training programs. So there's 5 different programs that we have identified that are most relevant that we felt for RCD professionals in leadership roles. Patrick Smith is going to talk about more leadership program. Christine Harvey is going to talk about the HPC Leadership Institute. Chris Bard is going to talk about ITIL. Ryan McTaggart is going to talk about Educause Executive Leadership Academy, and Henry Neiman is going to talk about CI Leadership Academy. So I'm going to, I guess I will, I had this order in mind that I wanted to follow, but if people have something else that they want to start off with, like, does anyone have preference that they want to go first? If not, then I'm going to stop my screen share, and then I will switch to Patrick. If you can go first.
Sure. Yeah, so I thought about doing slides and decided not to. There's a couple of websites that have a ton of information. I know there's a few other people on the call who have been through what used to be called ITLP, the IT Leaders Program, provided by Moore and Associates. Moore has been around for a long time. It's got a number of CIOs who help advise it and a bunch of other people who do training. Here is their website. I'll put it in chat. that describes the program. And then I think another really useful site is the website at Berkeley. So I spent a dozen years at UC Berkeley, where I was involved in research IT for a long time. And I went through this program at a really great time for me, just before I had the opportunity to step up and start bootstrapping the research IT program there at Berkeley. And what I liked about it was that I'd been through a lot of management training, which is important and useful for just dealing with people and dealing with all the rules and regulations that govern being a manager at a lot of institutions. That's a really important aspect of it. More focuses on leadership, and they make the distinction between those two, where management is about doing things the right way, and leadership is about doing the right things. And that's the way they often characterize it. They have a lot of fairly simple rubrics that are very useful for things that it's not that it's rocket science. It's not that it's things that you don't necessarily know you need to do, but they give you some frameworks and rubrics and tools that I found really useful. So the other aspect of it is that typically, at least when I was doing it, and I think this is the experience that I've heard from others as well, about a half a dozen schools, 5 or 6 schools will go through in a given cohort. Each school will pick somewhere around 4, 5, 6 people. So you have a cohort of about 30 or 35 people that are going through it together. There's a bunch of stuff that you will do offline, or you may do virtually now. It's a little bit different. When I did it, you met 4 times at different institutions for about a week. So that was a pretty big investment. Over the course of a year, you were going to spend almost a month of your time devoted to this program. And so that was a big investment that the institution made in people, but also there was a cost associated with that in terms of the program. And then, so when you did that, then you had a lot of time devoted strictly to this program, which was good in terms of getting you out of your normal job. That was also a challenge, obviously. People were always, having to catch up on email during breaks and afterwards and things like that. But you spent a lot of time with other people. And I ended up building really strong relationships to not only other people on my campus that I didn't know really well, but also people around the country. And we ended up building a sub-cohort of folks who were interested specifically in research IT. And that ended up being a source of some relationships that continue to this day. The other thing that they often talk about with this program, and it's probably true of some of the other programs you'll hear about today, is that in providing these rubrics and frameworks for this stuff, you end up with a shared vocabulary. And whether it's across the community or on your campus, they're almost memes that basically you have these touch points of saying, get up on the balcony, which is just an expression for backing away from the everyday tumult and tactical issues you face to take a broader look at things. And there's a lot of little things like that that end up being really useful just in terms of those building a leadership culture, whether it's on your campus or across the community. So I would encourage you to take a look at the materials that are there. I think that the website that Berkeley has that I put in the chat is really helpful just in terms of explaining what it is. You can also follow some of the other links in terms of like how do they select people, when they think people are ready for it. That's a big issue in terms of you've got to be ready to show up and lean in. It was one of the best programs of this sort that I've ever done. I've done a bunch of other like strategic analysis, strategic planning things, very mixed results. We did some interesting things with our business school, somewhat helpful in some cases. This, I would say, the vast majority of it was just super useful, and I got a tremendous amount of it. And in my experience, most of the people I've talked to who've been through it had really good things to say about it. And maybe after we have the presentations and people, we have the time to chat, others who've been through it may chime in and they can provide their comments as well. So that's all I've got, and I'll let other people go on.
Thanks, Patrick. So I had Christine next on my list.
Great. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see the slides?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to talk about the HPC Leadership Training Institute. So this is something that I do with Andrew Jones, who's now at Microsoft. I met him originally when he was working with NAG, the Numerical Algorithms Group. And this is a bit of a rotating program, so I'll talk about that a little bit more, but our most recent iteration was hosted at Stanford. So Ruth also helped us put this on. I see Ruth's on the call, and she's been fantastic to work with. And then the course is also co-hosted in part by TAC. So Dan Stanzione also comes and helps us put this on. So we've been hosted at TAC in person in the past before as well. So this is a program, and this is kind of our high-level statement. I know this is like a kind of wall of text, but it's really for managers and decision makers specific to HPC, or people that are looking to go into a management or decision maker role within HPC. So you don't already have to be there. It can be if you're looking to make that career step. So we talk about procurement considerations, pricing, capital expenditures, operating expenditures, cost benefit analysis of adding HPC or your company or institution's R&D portfolio. We really talk about the broad scope of HPC. So anything from, are you looking to add like a single rack in your small CS department to, buying out a really large supercomputer. We also talk about, traditional modeling and simulation workloads, now a lot of AI and non-traditional use cases and more. And so we really just try to put this program on to get more people in leadership. And I like Patrick's comment about what management is versus leadership. And I think we really try to get into that, making sure that you're leading and not necessarily just managing an HPC center. The cost details are up at the top. So for industry corporate, it's about $1,000, and then academia government, it's about $500. And the rates change, I think, depending on the host, but we try to keep it pretty consistently in that range. So the tutorial, the tutors for it are so myself, Andrew Jones, and then someone from the host institution, and Dan Stanzione from TAC. So, we try to provide, practical experience-based training on the business and leadership aspects of HPC. So real world HPC projects. So we'll talk about a lot of things that are going on, in your actual day-to-day procurement, managing operations of HPC systems, anything from, $500,000 to $100 million, commercial, public. And so our group has a lot of experience, and a lot of this is definitely from Andy's side, since he's been doing this for a bit longer than I have. But just kind of bringing to the table, so involvement in, very large HPC planning procurement projects. We are service managers, bidders to funding agencies, customers, impartial advisors, all the sectors, projects ranging from very small to large budgets. And then I've mostly worked in the US, but Andy has worked around the world, including EU, UK, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. And I think one thing that we try to bring to the table too is that we're impartial. So we're not selling anything. We don't have favors about, favors on any products. We're just trying to help you make the best decisions you can to lead an HPC center. This is a rough view of, this is actually what our timeline looked like for 2023. So just so you can get like an idea of what participating in the course is like. So we normally Monday people can take to travel, Thursday they can fly home in the afternoon. So we have 2.5 days of content. Sometimes it goes out to 3 days. It's hosted at an institution. And so we start off with the introduction. We talk about, who you are in HPC, what are the strategic aspects, who are the stakeholders. Then we'll talk about things like delivery models and metrics. How do you set up your organization to make sure you're delivering the right thing? How do you track what you're delivering? We'll talk through cost models. We even work through an example of going through a cost model. So if you're thinking about building something out versus doing it in the cloud, how do you create that first budget for HPC when you're going through things? We talk a lot about value. Technology evaluation, benchmarking. We do a lot on procurement. So we kind of walk through with you what a procurement process looks like. How do you do requirements capture? What does the supply chain look like? What does your RFP process look like? And what are the different options for what you can make an RFP process look like? We have guest speakers, including Dan Stanzione from TAC, and Ruth spoke about what Stanford does last time. We also talk about user service planning, including migration. So how do you get folks from one system to another? And then other sources of information and help. And so I think one of the things we try to do with this course is also make it interactive. So you're not coming in, you're not sitting in a classroom listening to Andy and I switch off who's going through slides every day. You'll see that we have quizzes. So we go through and we'll go through information that we have on the slides. We try to make it fun, do interactive quizzes. We also have working sessions. So we'll do group examples. So you'll actually work through, doing requirements, doing a procurement, and you'll get feedback from the instructors of the course on, what you need to be thinking of. We do a lot of networking as well. So you'll see that there's group dinners. So generally coffee and lunch is also provided. And so you're kind of with this cohort for the week and you're doing the networking. So you're meeting other people that are HPC center leaders, you're getting involved with them. So it's a good networking opportunity to come in and meet other people that are, doing the same job as you at different organizations too. And so it's a really good time to kind of just, lean into everything you're doing and meet other people that have different perspectives on it. So that's an overview of the course. And then just a little bit about how to attend. So we'll share the announcement when we launch the 2024 campaign or session with the list. We don't really have a formal website at all. It's just kind of whoever's hosting it helps us host the website. If you want to keep informed on it, I think the best thing to do is probably follow Andy or I on Twitter. So he's HPC Notes, I'm It's Harvey Time. And we're going through rotating hosts. We still haven't figured out where and when we're hosting for 2024, but in the past, this has been offered as a tutorial at SC in a one-day version. We hosted at Stanford this past year, and then we've hosted at TAC in person, I think 2 years. And during the pandemic, we did a few virtual iterations. So that is our program.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions for Christine, or we can hold the questions to the end, I guess. So let's go to Chris.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. I guess it's morning. It's morning for me. It's a pleasure to speak with everybody, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this practice and share what I know about ITIL and what we're planning to do with it here at Rice, and how we hope it will benefit us from a leadership perspective. While ITIL as a practice isn't necessarily associated with leadership training, we think that it will go hand in hand. I won't get into the history of the principles or procedures of the actual catalog itself, but for the purposes of the conversation, I just want to offer up a brief description of the framework for anybody who isn't already familiar with it. So in short, it's a standards-based discipline that focuses on how services are managed and delivered across an organization. In the previous iterations prior to version 4, the program focused explicitly on IT service management, but in this current iteration, the IT has been dropped because Axelos, the governing body behind it, they determined that service delivery methodologies don't need to be discrete to a single discipline since technology has now fully embedded itself into our regular everyday business operations. So essentially, managing IT services should look and feel just like managing any other service across the enterprise, whether we're talking about financial or HR, facilities, et cetera. So, and that brings us to why we're embracing it here at Rice, and what we do as leaders here in Rice. What do we want to accomplish with it? So to understand that, you kind of have to know a little bit about who we are, rather who we were as an organization and how we got here. Briefly, the Office of Information Technology evolved over several decades from multiple different technology disciplines that really stem from various demands and needs from the university. There wasn't a lot of forethought in the early days regarding how our department should be set up and run. It was just a lot of really smart people left to figure things out within their own specialties. And over time, those groups got really good at supporting their own particular areas, but they weren't well integrated or aligned holistically. What resulted, without spilling too much tea, as my daughter calls it, we experienced quite a bit of professional discord and disunion. Dysfunction might not even be too strong a word to use. So when we went through a leadership change recently, OIT, along with several of our other service-oriented departments, were given a mandate to improve the quality of our services, and not just in terms of accuracy and timeliness and efficiency, but also in customer satisfaction and overall experience. While ITIL is not meant to be any kind of panacea of organizational harmony, we think that it's going to provide us with a playbook of standard behaviors for how we manage our services, and that will allow us to operate cross-departmentally as a single entity. I think Patrick kind of alluded to the same thing. So instead of every distinct group operating under their own bespoke set of rules and insisting that everybody else adhere to what they want, we'll all kind of sing from the same sheet of music, so to speak. While I'm relatively new to higher education, my background is mostly corporate. my subsequent experiences in groups like EDUCAUSE and Internet 2, where I've been allowed to sort of correspond with other members of other higher ed groups, it's kind of indicated that Rice isn't alone in our experiences and our challenges. So starting this month, we're embarking on a very comprehensive ITIL V4 training program. And I should say it's ITIL V4 Foundations within Rice OIT. We're actually conducting 4 separate cohorts of 20 people each. They're all going to be remotely led, but instructor-led by professional instructors from an outside company that's experienced in taking other organizations on similar journeys. And I can provide more information on our vendor and selection process throughout the conversation for anybody who's interested. The first 2 cohorts will be a mix of our first level service desk staff, along with what we internally call our operational leadership group. Starting this effort off with our service desk staff was logical because they're really tip of the spear when it comes to our service delivery efforts. They're responsible for all the intake and nearly every service request and incident ticket that comes into OIT. They're also responsible for the resolution and fulfillment of those tickets, and what they don't resolve, they escalate out. The Operational Leadership Group, or OLG, which I'm a member, we're the body of managers and directors whose responsibilities lay in the middle. We're responsible for keeping the lights on, as it were. So primarily we support the strategic directives handed down by our senior leaders like Melissa Cragen, but we also advise them from the bottom up. So it makes sense that we go through this training as well, so that we can work with one another in a very cohesive and aligned manner. Our understanding of the framework will also be pretty essential in trying to disseminate these practices throughout the organization as more of our staff continue this training going into the last half of the calendar year. And I want to add also our own CRC group has begun to also implement a series of new practices and procedures meant to allow them to better support and execute on university-sponsored projects. And that brings me to the last 2 cohorts that are to be scheduled this fall, probably September and October, that will be the remaining staff level folks like our system admins, our engineers, architects, developers, the people who do all of the real IT work. They're going to need to know why tickets are getting handled the way they are and why leadership is making the strategic related decisions that we are. So, and if point of this slide here is it's sort of a generic cycle slide, but it's to put across the idea that if we do this right, then the process will never end because continuous improvement is a hallmark of ITIL. And along with a lot of other service management programs that you'll find out there, it's really a cycle of rinse and repeat and reiterate. So by the end of the year, fully half of our department will be trained and certified in this framework. And with a little luck and a few gentle reminders, those of us who have been formally trained will start passing our knowledge along to the remaining members of the department who didn't go through the course. And as an aside, Axelos, again, the governing body of ITIL, they've promised a 1-day non-cert path overview course as well. Again, I'm actually supposed to meet with them this week to find out exactly how that's going to work out. But the idea is that the remaining members of our OIT group will be able to attend that, gain some kind of a primer understanding of the course, and prepare them for their own certification path training. We're doing this all in conjunction with a massive reorg within our department. We're revising our service catalog and we're re-architecting our IT service management system. This is all meant to be in alignment with these ITIL practices that we're all going to get trained on. And that's really our happy path. Anyway, I'll end it here and I thank you guys for your time.
Thanks, Chris. I think I have Brian on the next list.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna have to steal that happy paths slide. I think that's pretty fantastic. I'm gonna have to grab that from you. I'll share my screen too. Hold on one second. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you again. Someone already dropped EDUCAUSE, so that's cool to know that this group is already a part of that. But my name is Ryan. I work for EDUCAUSE, and one of the programs that we've built in the last couple of years that we're really excited about, this year will be our third rendition, is the Executive Leaders Academy. So I'll drop a couple links in chat too, because similarly, I have like 3 slides that won't do justice to any of this. But these slides, if you're interested, these links over here, and we'll give you more information. So the Executive Leaders Academy was started, and Patrick, you said it, leadership and management. We have a whole host of management training if you're interested in our other institute programs, but we were missing that kind of leadership lens at the highest level, because what we've heard from our membership is leading at the executive level is new. It's very different than what you do as a director, and it can be pretty dang lonely because you're the only one on your campus, more likely. So we brought the Executive Leaders Academy in to solve some of those issues. It is a targeted program at a fairly specific audience. If you're familiar with EDUCAUSE, you know that we serve kind of a broad community of higher education technology professionals is the big umbrella. But within that, information technology professionals is the most obvious. But we also now have a pretty big membership of data. We have a big membership of cybersecurity and privacy, teaching and learning, and also innovation that all fall under kind of that technology professional. So those are the people that come to ELA. And then to narrow in on who really benefits from ELA, it's 2 groups. One, it's people that are new to C-suite executive leader positions. So I became the interim CIO. I became the interim CISO. I'm a brand new CISO. Those kinds of jobs, like they just got there maybe in the last couple of years, or people that are really aspiring to that in the next 1 to 2. And it is an application-based program. So you have to apply to get in. And similar, Patrick, you said, more does, and they look for, are you in the right place in your career to jump into this? We do the same because we want the cohort to be really, really valuable. And we want people to be in the same place so that they can relate to one another and they kind of build a cohort for life. We've already seen that happen. The ELA cohort from last year, the women in the group started a women in IT group that they've kept going now for 3 years, and they meet every month, which is super awesome. So those are the people that we try to get into ELA. As you all know, job titles in higher ed are real wonky and hard to keep track of, but we do our best. So we try to look beyond the job title and we try to see what they're actually doing in their position and if they're ready for this leadership focused kind of conversation. One thing that I love to point out about this program, and I'll put this link in chat too. It's linked from the link I sent you, but links upon links upon links is a real thing. So this is the group of people that executive leaders, participants will get to learn from this year. These are so we have 4 faculty members. These 4 people are in charge of the content arc of the whole program. And they also provide feedback on assignments. They coach and mentor the learners. So they're kind of our 4 hub people. And they're fantastic. You probably recognize some of those 4 names if you look in that link. And then we have 23 mentors. So each participant in ELA is signed up to work with a mentor. We pair them with one of our 23 mentors. You'll notice those people are also all at executive positions and have been for a long time, or maybe that's not true. They have been for a bit, and they have really good experience. So and our participants meet with their mentor at minimum once a month, but a lot of times they're actually able to meet with them more often. We leave that up to them to kind of decide. Once per month minimum, but feel free to expand if you want. And then we have 25 plus guest presenters. So the program is a hybrid program. We kick it off in September online, and then we do an immersion 3-day event at the annual EDUCAUSE annual conference, which is in October of every year. So we bring these folks in. If you register for ELA, your registration for the conference is embedded in that registration. So you automatically get registration to the conference as a part of being an ELA, and you have to be there. It's a requirement to be there in person. We do that for 2.5 days, and then we go back online until April. So it's a total 7-month program that has that hybrid methodology. And we meet Zoom when we're in the online, we meet on Zoom twice per month. And I'll show you kind of the rhythm of what the month looks like in just a second. But our live sessions on Zoom are mostly led by these guest presenters who you can see some are from higher ed, some are from other associations. We bring in specifically guest speakers. We bring in the a couple of chief business officers to talk about finance because they're the ones who know the most about finance, right? So we try to bring in the experts where we can, and then our faculty fill in the gaps. And then resources, we have a bunch of resources, so there's that. So the topics that we cover in ELA, and this is this year, we update these a lot, but we are currently accepting applications for 2024, so this was a good timing for this. We cover 7 modules. You can see the titles here, but to highlight a couple, we focus on change leadership early on. We'll bring in some experts from ProSci to do a session at the annual conference. If you're familiar with ProSci, EDUCAUSE just partnered with them. So we now give a discount to our members on ProSci change management programming. So we're going to bring them in to help us with that. We do things on collaboration. We talk about business and finance models. But Patrick, I'm going to steal what you said. All of these, we make sure that we're focusing on the leadership of these things and not the management of these things. So we're not talking about budget models. We're talking about leading budget conversations, right? So we try to make sure that leadership is always at the center. And then around the edge, I put this kind of dotted line because throughout all of these, we feed in right now topics. So I don't know if any have heard of this new thing called AI, but that's going to be throughout our program because it is everywhere in the EDUCAUSE world. And if we ignore it, everyone would be like, what happened there? So we try to bring in those kinds of topics instead of having a module for them. We put them throughout and have them kind of be a lens for stuff. And then each module runs on the same cadence per month. So we do a live session the first week, then they do learning, reflecting, reading. We've curated a bunch of resources and videos that they take in for week 2. And then in week 3, we come back and we do another live session, usually focused on a very specific model. So similar to more, but I think a little different, but we try to give them something to hang their hat on that's not theoretical in leadership, but it's very practical. And then week 4 is when they go meet with their mentors, they get coaching, they turn in assignments, we give them feedback on those. And then we go through the whole 7 months like that. So we run 1 cohort a year. Applications are currently open for the one that will begin in September of this year. It will run till April. We take the summer off to prep for the next one, and then we kick that off. And we just plan on keep going. So that's the Executive Leaders Academy. If you have questions, would love to chat with anybody about it. It's been a really successful program so far, and we keep learning and growing and changing. Cohort size is about 35 to 40 per year is what we've seen so far. So that's ELA.
Thanks, Ryan. I think we have Henry Neiman. Henry, that's Henry. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the Cyber Infrastructure Leadership Academy. So it's a series of workshops where there's collaboration between senior and national cyber infrastructure leaders, helping emerging and institutional cyber infrastructure leaders learn to become national CI leaders and to become better institutional CI leaders. So it also incorporates a mentoring and peer mentoring capability for the institutional CI leaders. We've done, call it 3.5 workshops so far, covering several dozen unique attendees. We started in February of 2019 with a workshop in person at the University of Oklahoma, my institution. Then in March of 22, we did one via Zoom because it was sort of tail end of COVID and we didn't want to press our luck. At PERC 23, we did a half-day workshop in collaboration with the Coalition for Academic Scientific Computation. I saw that Catherine Kelly's on the call. And then a couple months ago, we did a workshop at the spring meeting of CASC. And our intention is to continue this on an ongoing basis, ideally annually, but if we can't quite achieve annually, then as often as we can manage. Why are we doing this? Well, the boomers are retiring, and that in particular includes senior cyber infrastructure leaders. So in 2015, the Social Security Administration reported that we were losing to retirement 7,600 people a day. That's presumably accelerated in the past now 10 years. We need to capture their wisdom and experience because essentially what's happening is those of us at the institutional CI leadership level are being dragged kicking and screaming upstairs. And when we get upstairs, whether we wanted to or not, we need to be able to hit the ground running. There isn't going to be a grace period for us to learn how to do it. So we need to capture their wisdom and experience before they fade off into retirement. And some of the best candidates to be the national CI leaders are the institutional CI leaders. And as I'll talk about a little later, some of the best candidates to be institutional CI leaders, I have a personal bias, are experienced research computing facilitators. It's also the case, and we really found this out at PERC 23, that the institutional CI leaders not only want to learn to be national CI leaders, but also want to improve in their current institutional CI leader roles. So we want to serve that need as well. That was not what the Leadership Academy was originally set up for, but that's where a big chunk of the demand is. So over the several workshops that we've had, the 3.5 workshops, this is essentially just a digest of the various topics that we've covered. Senior leadership experiences, kind of getting a feel, picking the brains, storytelling about what senior CI leaders have done and what the outcomes have been. We're sort of more learning from informal case studies than from principles, because at that level, the number of national CI leaders is not large. And so drawing the kind of general conclusions that can be drawn about, say, the IT professions as a whole is much more challenging. So qualitative data is absolutely crucial. Leadership for team science and grand challenges, securing institutional commitments. We've also done a series of perspective panels where we bring in outside folks, people who are not themselves CI leaders or not necessarily CI leaders, but who have had important roles that can provide insight to CI leaders. So funding agencies, industry, and for both funding agencies and industry, we've picked folks who used to be in those roles because we, let's say, strongly suspect that folks who are currently in those roles are not allowed to be as candid as we would like. Whereas former, they can be a bit more candid about what experiences they had. And then perspectives of researchers. We've brought in some very prominent national computing and data intensive researchers, and then institutional leaders, so CIOs, VPs of research, deans, provosts, that sort of thing, to give their perspective not only on the value of research computing, but especially on what they see the needs are for research computing. And then a lot of breakout sessions to start getting some focus on areas that are crucial to CI leadership success, both at the institutional and at the national level. And I'm not going to rattle through all of them, but you can see that there's quite a variety of topics that we've covered, most of which are CI leadership specific. That is, they are not generic to all areas of IT, let alone all professional areas. So how does this fit in with sort of a broader ecosystem of research computing training? Well, it turns out there's sort of a 5-level training regime if you approach this carefully. The virtual residency program, which I think many of you are familiar with, trains CI facilitators, and it has 3 levels. The introductory level is facilitation skills for pre-service and early in-service, novice facilitators. The intermediate level is CI facilitation skills for more experienced facilitators. And then what we've been calling the virtual residency advanced level is for CI leadership skills, and in particular institutional CI leadership skills, for facilitators who want to transition to CI leadership, because that's our hidden secret agenda, is where our community is really hitting pain points is identifying CI leaders at the institutional level, because more and more institutions are adopting the use and providing of research computing to their researchers. So we need more and more folks, and we need a mechanism to help those folks learn how to do that job. When I started as a CI leader at my institution, nobody had any expectation about what the job was, and they were just happy if I showed up. I had 5 years to figure out what my job was. Now you have 5 minutes. We now are developing the Certified Cyber Infrastructure Facilitator and Training and Development Program, or CIFTD, which is a professional development certification, so non-matriculating, it's informal education for CI facilitators. And then the way the CI Leadership Academy fits in is the next level after Virtual Residency Advanced is CI Leadership Academy, Institutional CI Leadership, and then the final level, the top level, so to speak, is transitioning from institutional to national CI leadership. So what are our next steps? Because I know I'm very short on time. We are hoping to hold our next workshop at the CASC Spring 2025 meeting. And we have an NSF grant that was funded to support the 2024 meeting, but the funding showed up fairly late in the game. And so I think we're going to transition the unspent funds to the 2025 workshop. And there's our leadership team for the workshop grant. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we want this to be an ongoing series and not one and done, or even 3.5 and done. The other thing is, in the virtual residency, we've been focused primarily on the introductory and intermediate levels over the last several years because of developing CIFTD. What we want to do is to create a separate standalone advanced workshop next summer. That's an aspiration, not yet a promise. So that can include not only CI facilitators, but in fact all categories of CI professionals, because we believe that CI leaders are going to come from all categories of CI professionals, not only CI providers, but also CI consumers, that is, computing and data intensive researchers. Historically, that's been a rich source of research computing leadership. Okay, and I think the rule is all the questions come at the end, and I'm at the end, so I'm open for questions, and I think all of us are open for questions.
All right. Thanks, Anil. Thanks, everyone, for presenting. So I think that was quite a bit to take on. So there was, I don't think there was any questions as such in the chat, but I had one quick question. Did we leave out any major programs that should have been discussed that people generally tend to go to? And this is for everyone, not just for the panelist. Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
I do see, or I've spoken with the Computing Research Associates, and I know they do offer a leadership summit every February. It's they bring together society liaisons from ACM, IEEE, and SIAM, and with members of CRA, and it's a half-a-day session. They have a couple of other leadership type of programs. Might be fodder the next time that this topic surfaces.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I'll put the link in the chat.
That would be great. Now, I think, Scott, you did put in the call doc about the Canadian perspective, and I apologize, I don't know much about the Canadian offerings. So if you want to give a quick summary of that, that would be great.
Sure. I had attended a number of years ago a program that's put on by the University of Manitoba, CHURD, especially the University Management course. And so that allows people from all aspects of universities to learn how these, integrated systems work across the entire university. And so you really do gain a perspective of all of HR, all of finance, things like that. And so it really helps, because a lot of times university IT shops are, just kind of set aside and said, keep the servers running and stay in your lane. And so I found that to be useful. And then as far as particularly personal development in management and leadership, manager tools has been quite useful to me. So just thought I'd put those in there.
Sounds good. So I have personally attended a couple of those programs that were discussed today. So how do folks go about selecting which program they seem the most fit for them? What are your thoughts? Like, how do you identify that? Again, I'm hoping for broader participation. Hopefully panelists can chime in, obviously, but then hoping for others to join as well.
I feel like the biggest thing I think of is just timing and commitment, right? Like, does it line up with your schedule? Some of the programs, like, you get a ton of value, but not everybody can do a 7-month commitment. And then sometimes, if a workshop is offered during a certain week, you just might not be able to go, and there's a similar program offered a different week and you can make it. So I think the timing is my first differentiator. And then, just looking for what's covered in the content. And if I see myself as being a good participant, or if I know anybody that's taken it, that's been recommended by, I feel like that's a big indicator too.
Yeah, I think those are all good points, Christine. And the other thing I would say is sometimes it's a campus thing. Different campuses may have a tradition of sending people to certain things, and so there's real value in being part of that cohort. The flip side of that is, occasionally getting something new into that mix might be interesting. And I think it's great to have heard about all these different ones that are today. I think some of them are also geared a little bit at different career paths and stages in your careers. Obviously, the ELA one is for people who are advancing quite a bit. And like more is, I think, really good for people who are stepping into director roles and things like that, who are really learning how to do that sort of campus level influence as opposed to maybe national influence and things like that. And I think, and it's also much more broadly focused than research computing. So you'll get a lot more interaction, and you'll be building connections to people outside of HBC, which may be good or may not. It sort of depends on what you want to do out of it.
Peter?
So hi, this is Pete Angelos from Fond du Lac Tribal Community College. I was very fortunate to be able to participate in some of these leadership activities, more associates. And then I'm a big proponent of the EDUCAUSE ELA. So some of this has to do with time, like Christine said, but if you're in a C position as a CIO, if you look to the president or somebody else when they get onboarded, it's recognized that they need to make a commitment to learn professional leadership. And the one thing I got out of more that I think Patrick alluded to was every day you're confronted with operational tactical things, but your role is to be a strategic leader and be able to figure out how to cut away enough time and attention from all the noise of operational tactical management to be able to be effective in that. So that was one thing. But there's an access barrier. Like your institution needs to kind of be doing more. And some of the other programs, it's a time and money for like small tribal college, we have or HBCUs, it may be more challenging to access more. So like for the ELA, I know many of the people who have participated on both sides of it. And they immediately, like what I've heard is you feel like you're immediately plugged into a national level of peers that follows you your whole entire career. So it's a huge jump start to just make it so that you're not isolated and alone in your new position. I think that's probably one of the highest values. And then just the quality of the program and the people you get a chance to work with is just outstanding. I mean, I don't know of where you're going to get like these 30 plus people pulled together at your fingertips when you're just kind of starting out and get hired as a executive position.
Thanks, Pete. Anyone else has any other comments? on how they go about selecting these different programs. Any other questions for the panelist? I know some of the programs are quite intense, some of the programs are really short, so there's a lot of options to choose from depending on what your time commitment looks like. So as Christine said.
It is, but you know, some of the things that Peter said, I think I would really underscore as well, that you build a cohort and you build a set of connections, and it just opens your eyes up to how much is going on and how much bigger your world is than you realized on the one hand. And on the other hand, it makes it so much easier to reach out and ask for help. And you know, talk to people who really know what they're talking about when you're trying to figure something out. And you know, sort of learning how to do that and build those connections and maintain those connections, I think it's an incredibly valuable lesson. I think a lot of these offer that, and I think being able to build a cohort that way and build out your network is incredibly valuable, and it's fun. I mean, that's the other thing I will say. And going to ITLP was a blast. It was a ton of work, and it was hard to manage in terms of my work schedule. But you know, being there with them and going out in the evening and going out to dinner and going out afterwards and hanging out, you know, you build some amazing connections, and it's great fun. But I grew a ton going through ITLP.
Thanks for those insights. So there are no questions. I think we are at time as well. So thanks everyone for joining the call. We have but to look forward to in a couple of months. We are taking break next month. So just a quick reminder, and then we'll see you on the August call.
Thanks, everybody. This is super interesting. And thanks to all the presenters. That was great. And I have to say, I'm super impressed that everybody stayed to their time limits, because it's hard for everyone to do, I know.
Thank you.
As someone who always
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.